Hey Crossroadians, I'm Dragon, this is Dragon's Den. Get your lightsabers ready, cause today we're talking about Star Wars Edge of the Empire. Hey everybody, it's Dragon, and after a year-long hiatus, Dragon's Den is back. And today we're talking about Star Wars Edge of the Empire. Now for those of you that don't know, Star Wars Edge of the Empire is Fantasy Flight's newest RPG based in every fanboy's favorite Ewok-infested verse. Now to say that I've been waiting forever for this game would be an understatement. It was more like 6 months, but who cares?
Oh my god, what happened to the sides of the screen?
Now, in Edge of the Empire, the creators really focused on developing the story-oriented gameplay aspect of the RPG. And the best example of how they did this was in the character creation process. The first thing you do when developing a character in Edge of the Empire is assign them an obligation. The book provides a table and you roll a D100, and whatever the obligation, or whatever the number fits, that's the obligation your character gets. Now the obligations are vague. Generally they're like betrayal, duty bound, there's a bounty, family, and basically open-ended so that, well, that fits your character, you can decide how it works into the story of your character. Now, how the obligation works in the story is before each session, the GM will roll a D100, and your obligation has a numerical value depending on the gameplay and how your campaign's going. And if the value that the GM rolls is less than what your entire party's obligational value is, that's going to affect everybody's characters for that entire session. So the higher your obligational value goes, the more likely you're going to have to deal with it before you can get anything else done. Now, the second part of character creation that really emphasizes the story-oriented gameplay and development of characters is that near the end of the character creation process, you have to assign your character a motivation. Now, there are two tables that you can roll on that will decide it, and these motivations can vary from relationships, ambitions, or even duties that they feel. He said duty. Basically, it helps give your character a direction and really can add to the background. I personally created a character that originally had a betrayal and for his obligation, and his motivation was he hated the Empire. So I just simply put that his motivation was because of the betrayal. The Empire betrayed him, so now he hates the Empire. And that's the kind of things that you can do. You can use these story-oriented aspects of the character creation process and really build a rich background for your character. Now, the mechanics of Edge of the Empire are a lot of fun, and a lot different than most of the RPGs I've played before. That's because of two major reasons. One, the game doesn't use numerical dice like most RPGs. And two, when you roll a skill check or a combat check, you're generally not rolling against the GM. That's because the game utilizes its own set of 7 different dice. Now, these 7 dice are split into 3 pools. There are 3 positive dice, 3 types of negative dice, and then 1 sort of neutral dice that comes into play later. I'll tell you about that later. Now, the 3 positive dice are added to your basic dice pool whenever you roll a skill check or a combat check. They're added based on your skills, your characteristics, any talents you might have, and anything that your gear might help provide. Anything that's good for you. And then the GM will tell you what negative dice to add based on the difficulty, the hindering terrain, or elements like rain, that kind of stuff. And once you've got all that, that's your dice pool. Negative and positive dice combined. And you roll that. Now, on the negative and positive dice, there are successes and failures. And it's very simple. If you have more successes than you have failures, then you've succeeded at the task. And if you have more failures than you have successes, you've obviously failed at the task. Now, it doesn't stop there, because also on the dice, there are boosts and setbacks. Now, these boosts and setbacks don't affect whether or not you succeed, but they can help you out in different ways. For example, if you get a boost and no setbacks, then regardless of if you succeeded at the task or failed at the task, you're gonna get something helpful to you. You won't, if you fail at the task, you can still get a boost. So say you fail to slice a computer, but you get 2 boosts. Then you didn't succeed in slicing the computer properly to open the door that you wanted, but it's accidentally opened a panel that now provides cover from anyone who's trying to fire at you. And the same thing can happen if you succeed at a task but get some setbacks. You may have opened the door, but there might be 2 guards inside waiting for you. It's that kind of stuff that can really add to the story and the cinematic gameplay aspect. Now, the force die is one of my favorite aspects of this game. Basically, on the force die are either a white dot, a black dot, or 2 of a white or black dot. And each of these dots represent a light side point or a dark side point. Now, all of these light side and dark side points that the characters roll at the beginning of the game go into what's called the destiny pool, and that will never change size throughout the session. Now, throughout the gameplay, the characters can then use those light side points to get out of a sticky situation, maybe use something advantageous to them throughout the gameplay that they need because a roll wouldn't cut it. On the flip side, the GM can use the dark side points that they roll to cause something detrimental to them, to increase an opponent's level or destruction. And whenever either a player or the GM uses a light side or dark side point, is replaced immediately by the opposite. So if all the characters use all the light side points in their pool, they have, say, a pool of 6, 3 light side and 3 dark side points. And throughout the gameplay, the players use up 2 of them. Once they use those, they're immediately replaced by dark side points. So the GM now has more dark side points to use. But if he uses those, they're replaced by light side points. So it sort of adds an ebb and flow sort of power struggle throughout the gameplay, which is a lot of fun. Now, the only drawback I can see to this game at first glance is the fact that it uses its own dice. A lot of players already have D6, D12, D10 already in their pool. I've got a sack full of dice at my house, and a lot of players won't want to have to spend the money to buy new dice. Thankfully, though, there is a table in the book that provides basically a translation if you don't have the dice prepared, that you can use your own D6, D12, etc. to play the game. There's also an app available on the iPad, Android that you can download that allows you to roll dice digitally, and it has all the dice not only for Edge of the Empire but also for the X-Wing miniatures game. So it kind of comes in handy. Finally, on a personal note, I love Star Wars. If you couldn't tell already, I've been a fan of the franchise since I was a kid, and this game has just got me super excited, especially because it's Fantasy Flight, and Fantasy Flight has a great tradition of supporting its games with a lot of expansions and a lot of ways to really increase gameplay. If you haven't seen, the previous X-Wing miniatures game and the Star Wars LCG have been both supported very well with expansion packs and just overall league play as well. So this has got to be a lot coming. Now, rumored down the pipeline is that there's going to be 2 more sets for Edge of the Empire. This first one covers, obviously, the Edge of the Empire, the people on the outskirts of the universe, scraping a living, doing whatever dirty job they can. Now, the next one is supposedly going to cover more of the Imperial aspect, with the military and etc. like that. And then the third one is supposed to really get into the whole Jedi aspect. And that's where it's really going to get big. Hopefully not going to be overpowered. That being said, if you haven't gotten the chance to come down to the store and pick one up, I suggest doing so very quickly. This is a hot ticket item. They go fast. We've got a few coming in, but who knows how long they'll stay in store. Now, that's my initial look at Edge of the Empire by Fantasy Flight. Once I've played a few campaigns, I'll post another video, give you a full description of how the gameplay went, and whether or not I thought it was a fun game. That being said, if you've played it or looked at the beginner's guide and you've got opinions, go ahead and post your comments in the comment section below and tell us what you thought. And if you've got any suggestions for other RPGs we should do a review of, post that too. I'm Dragon, and this was Dragon's Den.